Lee Tae-ho was having the worst day of his life. His cargo ship's coffee maker had broken that morning, his navigation system kept glitching, and now he was 3 hours behind schedule on his delivery to the outer colonies. All he wanted was to finish this boring cargo run and get back to Earth for some real food and his own bed. He was daydreaming about his grandmother's kimchi when his ship's alert system started screaming. The sound made him jump so hard he spilled lukewarm instant coffee all over his flight suit. "What now?" he muttered, wiping the mess with his sleeve. The scanner showed something that made his stomach drop. About 50 kilometers away, a massive ship was under attack. It wasn't like any human vessel he'd ever seen. The thing looked like it was made of glass and crystal, all flowing curves and strange angles that hurt his eyes to look at. Beautiful, but completely alien. 3 smaller ships were circling it like wolves around a wounded deer. Pirates. Tae-ho had heard stories about them from other cargo pilots. They attacked anyone weak enough, stole everything valuable, and usually left no survivors to tell the tale. The alien ship was clearly losing. Its crystal hull was cracked in dozens of places, and strange blue light was leaking out like blood. The pirates were taking their time, probably enjoying the hunt. Tae-ho's hands hovered over his communication console. He should call for help. Report it to the Space Authority. Follow proper procedures. That's what his training manual said. That's what any smart person would do. But by the time help arrived, that beautiful crystal ship would be nothing but floating debris. And everyone inside would be dead. His grandfather's voice echoed in his memory. Tae-ho, sometimes doing the right thing means ignoring the rules. Good people don't stand by and watch others suffer. This is so stupid, Tae-ho said to himself. His cargo freighter wasn't built for fighting. It was basically a flying truck with thick armor plating for asteroid protection. The pirates had real weapons, real shields, real training. But they also weren't expecting some crazy human to come charging at them like an angry bull. Tae-ho switched off his transponder so they couldn't identify him later. He redirected all power from his cargo bay lights to his engines. His ship groaned and shook as he pushed it far beyond safe speeds. The pirates were so focused on their victim that they didn't notice him until it was too late. Tae-ho aimed straight for the largest pirate ship and held his breath. At the last second, he fired his maneuvering thrusters and slammed into their side like a hammer. The impact threw him against his safety harness so hard he saw stars. Alarms were going off everywhere. But through his cracked view screen, he could see the pirate ship spinning away, its engines sparking and failing. The other 2 pirates immediately broke off their attack on the crystal ship. They weren't expecting a fight, especially not from some maniac willing to use his own ship as a weapon. Within minutes, they were running away at full speed, probably thinking the whole thing was some kind of trap. Tae-ho's ship was badly damaged, but still flying. The alien vessel was drifting, silently, its beautiful crystal hull now dark and lifeless looking. He had no idea if anyone inside was still alive, or if they would even want his help. But he knew he had to try. Tae-ho stared at the alien ship through his cracked view screen, his heart pounding like a drum. The crystal vessel looked dead in space. No lights, no movement, nothing. For a moment he wondered if he was too late. Maybe everyone inside was already gone. "Come on, Tae-ho," he whispered to himself. "You didn't ram a pirate ship just to give up now." He grabbed his emergency kit and put on his spacesuit. The thing was old and patched in 3 places, but it would have to do. His hands were shaking as he sealed the helmet. He'd never boarded an alien ship before. Hell, he'd never even seen an alien before. The airlock between the ships connected with a soft hiss. Tae-ho's suit lights cut through the darkness as he stepped into the crystal ship. The walls around him glowed faintly, like they were made of some kind of living glass. Everything was smooth and curved, nothing like the sharp angles and metal corridors of human ships. "Hello?" he called out, his voice echoing strangely in the alien space. "Is anyone alive in here?" The silence was terrifying. His boots made soft, clicking sounds on the crystal floor as he moved deeper into the ship. The air felt thick and strange, even through his suit filters. Strange symbols glowed weakly on the walls, probably their writing system. Then he heard it, a soft sound, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Someone was still breathing. Tae-ho followed the sound through a doorway that was way too tall for humans. The room beyond was huge, with a ceiling that disappeared into shadows. In the center, several figures lay motionless on what looked like crystal beds. Most of them were clearly dead. But one was different. She was tall, maybe 7 feet, with skin that looked like polished silver. Strange markings on her arms and face glowed with a soft blue light, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. Her breathing was shallow and ragged. "Hey." "There," Tae-ho said softly, kneeling beside her. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes opened. They were completely black, like looking into deep space, but somehow they weren't scary. They were intelligent, aware, and full of pain. She tried to speak, but the sounds that came out were like music. Beautiful, flowing tones that rose and fell like a song. Tae-ho couldn't understand a single word, but he could hear the hurt in her voice. I know, he said, opening his medical kit. "You're in bad shape, but I'm going to help you, okay?" His first aid training was basic at best. He'd learned enough to handle cuts and broken bones, maybe a concussion. But this alien woman had injuries he couldn't even identify. Her silver skin was cracked in places, and that blue light was flickering like a dying bulb. Tae-ho did what he could. He cleaned her wounds with antiseptic, even though he had no idea if it would help or hurt. He wrapped bandages around the worst. Cuts? When he found what looked like a broken arm, he made a simple split from pieces of his emergency kit. The whole time, she watched him with those deep black eyes. Sometimes she would make those musical sounds, and even though he couldn't understand the words, her tone was getting stronger. Less pained, more grateful. "There," he said finally, sitting back on his heels. "That's all I can do with what I've got. You need real medical help, not some cargo pilot playing doctor." She reached out with her good hand and touched his arm. Her skin was warm, surprisingly human-like despite its strange silver color. She spoke again in those chiming tones, and this time Tae-ho was sure he heard gratitude in her voice. "You're welcome," he said, even though she probably couldn't understand him either. "That's what humans do. We help." The silver-skinned woman woke up 3 days later on Tae-ho's cargo ship, and her first reaction was pure confusion. Her dark eyes darted around his tiny medical bay, taking in the rusty metal walls, the flickering lights, and the duct tape holding half his equipment together. Tae-ho was sitting in the corner, eating instant noodles from a plastic cup and trying to fix his broken coffee maker with a screwdriver. When he noticed she was awake, he nearly choked on his food. "Oh, you're up," he said, jumping to his feet. "How are you feeling? Any pain? Dizziness? I honestly have no idea what normal is for your species." She stared at him for a long moment, then looked around the cramped room again. Her musical voice filled the air, but now it sounded more confused than grateful. The blue markings on her skin pulsed faster, like she was agitated. "Right, we still can't understand each other," Tae-ho muttered. He rummaged through a storage locker and pulled out a small device that looked like it had been dropped and stepped on several times. "Let me try this translation thing. I bought it used, so it might not work perfectly." He fiddled with the device for a few minutes, cursing under his breath when it made weird beeping sounds. Finally, it projected a small hologram between them. "Testing," he said. The device flickered, then produced those same musical tones. The woman's eyes widened. She spoke quickly, her voice rising with what sounded like surprise and maybe a little anger. The translator crackled to life with a robotic voice. "Where am I? This place is primitive. What species are you?" "I'm human," Tae-ho said, slowly. "You're on my cargo ship. I found you hurt on your vessel after those pirates attacked. I brought you here to help you recover." She listened to the translation, then responded in rapid musical tones. "You are human. From Earth? Why did you interfere? What is your purpose? What do you want from me?" Tae-ho blinked. "Want from you? Nothing. I just wanted to help. You were hurt, and those pirates were going to kill you." Her expression grew even more confused. The blue markings on her skin flickered like a broken light bulb. "Nothing you'd expect, no payment, no alliance, no political advantage. You saved my life, you for nothing." "Well, yeah," Tae-ho said, scratching his head. "I mean, you were in trouble. I had to help. That's just what you do. She was quiet for a long time, staring at him like he was speaking in riddles. Finally, she spoke again, her voice softer. I am Nalaveth. I am queen of the Astari Empire. You saved the ruler of 7 star systems, and you knew nothing of this? Teho's instant noodles fell out of his hands and splattered on the floor. You're a queen. Oh no, oh no, oh no. I've been feeding you military rations and making you sleep on my spare cot. I probably broke like 50 diplomatic laws. Are you going to have me executed? For the first time since waking up, Queen Nalaveth's expression softened. Something that might have been amusement flickered in her dark eyes. You fear punishment, yet you saved me knowing nothing of who I was? In my culture, all actions have calculated purpose. Nothing is done without expected gain. But you helped simply because I needed help. That's how humans are, Teho said, still looking panicked. We see someone in trouble. We help. It's not complicated. Queen. Nalaveth was quiet for a very long time, studying his face like she was trying to solve an impossible puzzle. Fascinating, she whispered, and for the first time her voice held something like wonder. Teho spent the next hour pacing around his small cargo bay like a caged animal, pulling at his hair and muttering to himself. Queen Nalaveth watched. Him from her makeshift bed, her head tilted in curiosity. I gave you instant ramen, he said for the 10th time. Cheap, terrible instant ramen, and that cot probably gave you back problems. Oh God, I made you use my spare blanket that smells like engine oil. The translation device crackled as Queen Nalaveth spoke. Teho, please, stop moving. You are making me dizzy. He stopped and looked at her with wide, panicked eyes. Your Majesty, I am so sorry. I should bow, right? Or kneel. I don't know alien royal protocol. Please don't start a war because I'm an idiot. She made those musical sounds again, and this time the translator picked up something new. Laughter. You amuse me, human. In my court, beings grovel and calculate every word. You worry about blanket smell. This is refreshing. Refreshing? Teho sat down heavily in his pilot chair. Lady, I probably committed treason just by putting you in my spare room instead of giving you my bed. You gave me your best care. You shared your food, your shelter. Among my people, this would be great honor. Queen Nalaveth struggled to sit up straighter, wincing as her injuries protested. I must repay this debt. You saved the life of Astari royalty. Name your reward. Teho blinked. My what now? Your reward. Riches beyond measure? Command of a star fleet? Your own planet to rule? Marriage into royal bloodline? Whoa, hold up. Teho held up his hands. I don't want any of that stuff. I'm just a cargo pilot. I haul boxes from one place to another. That's all I know how to do. The blue markings on her skin flickered rapidly. You refuse? All humans desire power, wealth? Do they not? Some do, I guess, but not me. Teho shrugged. I've got my ship, my route, enough money for food and fuel. What more do I need? Queen Nalaveth stared at him in complete silence for nearly a full minute. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. You truly want nothing, no payment, no favor, no advancement. You saved my life for nothing. It wasn't for nothing, Teho said. I saved your life because it was the right thing to do. That's payment enough. She made a sound that the translator couldn't interpret, but it sounded almost like a gasp. This is impossible. In Astari culture, every action has calculated purpose. We trade. Favors, debts, obligations, nothing is done from pure, what is your word, kindness? Well, that sounds exhausting, Teho said. Always having to figure out what everyone wants from you. No wonder you looked so surprised when I helped. You? Queen Nalaveth was quiet again, but this time she was studying him like he was the most fascinating thing in the universe. My advisors will not believe this. A being who acts without personal gain, who saves a queen and asks for nothing, who lives simply by choice. Look, Your Majesty, I know it's probably weird for someone like you to understand, but I really am happy just hauling cargo. It's peaceful. I see different planets, meet different people, and I don't have to worry about politics or wars or who's trying to stab who in the back. She leaned forward, her dark eyes intense. You would refuse an empire for peace? Every single time, Teho said without hesitation. Queen Naleveth made those musical sounds again, but now they sounded almost reverent. Remarkable, she whispered. Absolutely remarkable. 2 days later, Queen Naleveth's royal fleet arrived to rescue her, and Teho nearly had a heart attack. His tiny cargo ship was suddenly surrounded by vessels that looked like flying palaces made of crystal and light. Each one was bigger than most space stations he'd visited. Oh no, oh no, oh no, Teho muttered, watching through his view screen. As elegant shuttles approached his beat-up freighter, they're going to arrest me for kidnapping royalty or something. Queen Naleveth, who was now strong enough to stand, placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. The translator device crackled to life. They come to honor you, not harm you. You are hero to my people. I'm not a hero, Teho protested. So I'm just a guy who happened to be in the right place at the right time. When the shuttle docked, 3 tall Astari beings stepped aboard. They were dressed in flowing robes that seemed to be made of liquid starlight, and they looked at Teho's rusty cargo bay like they'd never seen anything so primitive in their lives. They spoke rapidly to Queen Naleveth in their musical language, their voices rising and falling with what sounded like concern and confusion. She responded calmly, but Teho could tell they were arguing about something. Finally, she turned to him. My advisors wish to take you to the fleet. You will be honored properly. That's really not necessary, Teho said quickly. I should probably just get back to my shipping route. I've got deliveries to make. Queen Naleveth's advisors looked at each other with expressions of complete bewilderment. One of them spoke directly to Teho through the translator. You refuse royal hospitality. It's not that I'm refusing, Teho said, wringing his hands. I just don't want to cause any trouble. I'm not exactly royal material. Queen Naleveth was quiet for a long moment, her dark eyes studying his face. Then she made a decision that clearly shocked everyone in the room. Teho of Earth, she said formally, I invite you to my private chambers aboard the flagship. This is great honor. The silence that followed was deafening. Her advisors stared at her like she'd just announced she was giving up the throne. One of them spoke in rapid, urgent tones, clearly trying to talk her out of something. Your Majesty, Teho said nervously, I don't think that's a good idea. I'll probably break something or insult someone by accident. I don't know your customs. That is precisely why. You must come, she said. You interest me greatly. Her chief advisor stepped forward, speaking directly to Teho. Human. Do you understand what is offered in 5,000? Years of Astari. History only 7. Beings have entered the Queen's private chambers. You would be the 8th. Teho's mouth went dry. 7. In 5,000 years? Oh God, I'm definitely going to mess this up. You cannot refuse this, another advisor said urgently. It would be a grave insult were to Her Majesty. But if I accept it, I'll probably commit some horrible mistake and start an interstellar incident, Teho said, starting to panic. What if I sit in the wrong chair? What if I say something wrong? What if I'm supposed to bring a gift and I don't have one? Queen Naleveth watched his growing panic with something that might have been amusement. You worry about chairs and gifts. Others would scheme for political advantage. You are unlike any being I have met. That's the problem, Teho exclaimed. I'm completely out of my league here. I fix cargo ships and deliver boxes. I don't do royal stuff. Which is exactly why you must come, she said firmly. My decision is final. Her advisors looked like they wanted to argue more, but they bowed their heads in resignation. Teho, meanwhile, was wondering if it was too late to just run away and hide somewhere in deep space. Tae-ho spent the entire shuttle ride to the flagship, rehearsing what he thought were proper royal greetings. He'd watched old Earth movies about kings and queens, so he practiced bowing at different angles and tried to remember if he was supposed to call her Your Majesty or Your Highness or something else entirely. When the shuttle doors opened, he expected to see a throne room filled with guards and courtiers. Instead, he was led through corridors that looked like the inside of a giant crystal, with walls that pulsed gently with soft light. Everything was beautiful, but alien, and it made him feel even more out of place. The guards stopped at a doorway. That seemed to be made of flowing water, held in the shape of an arch. One of them gestured for Tae-ho to enter alone. "Wait, you're not coming with me?" Tae-ho asked nervously. The guard spoke through his translator. "None may enter the Queen's private chambers, except by invitation. You go alone." Tae-ho took a deep breath and stepped through the water-like doorway. He was ready for a formal reception room with fancy chairs and official portraits. What he found instead made him stop dead in his tracks. The chamber was nothing like he'd expected. It was cozy, almost like someone's living room. Soft, glowing crystals provided warm light. Strange but beautiful music played softly from somewhere. He couldn't see. The walls were covered with what looked like artwork, swirling patterns that seemed to move and change when he wasn't looking directly at them. Queen Nalaveth was sitting on what appeared to be a comfortable couch made of some kind of glowing fabric. She was wearing simple clothes instead of royal robes, and she looked relaxed, normal. Well, as normal as a 7-foot-tall silver alien could look. "Welcome, Tae-ho," she said through the translator. "Please, sit wherever you are comfortable." Tae-ho looked around desperately for the most humble-looking seat he could find. There was a small cushion on the floor that seemed appropriate for someone of his lowly status. He started to sit down on it. "Not there," Queen Nalaveth said quickly. "That is for meditation. Sit here, beside me." She patted the couch next to her. Tae-ho's eyes widened in horror. "Your Majesty, I couldn't possibly sit next to you. That would be incredibly disrespectful." "I should sit on the floor or maybe stand or—" "Tae-ho," she interrupted gently. "This is my private space. Here, there are no formal rules. Sit." Reluctantly, he perched on the very edge of the couch, as far from her as possible while still technically sitting on it. His back was rigid with tension. "Tell me," Queen Nalaveth said, settling back comfortably, "about your childhood. Where did you grow up?" Tae-ho blinked. "My childhood? Is this part of the security screening? I mean, I was born in Seoul, lived there until I was 18, then joined the merchant fleet. Pretty boring stuff, really." "What did your parents do?" "My dad was a mechanic. My mom worked in a restaurant. Look, Your Majesty, if you need to know about any criminal connections or suspicious activities, I can tell you right now I don't have any. I've never even gotten a speeding ticket." Queen Nalaveth's head tilted in that curious way he was getting used to. "Criminal connections? Why would I ask about that? Isn't this an interrogation? I mean, you're asking all these personal questions about my background and family. I figured you needed to make sure I wasn't a spy or a terrorist or something." She made those musical sounds that he'd learned meant she was laughing. "You think I am interrogating you? In my private chambers?" "Well, yeah, I mean, what else would this be? You probably need to run background checks on anyone who gets close to royalty, right?" Queen Nalaveth was quiet for a moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was softer. "Tae-ho, I am not questioning your loyalty. I am trying to understand you, your species, your way of thinking. You fascinate me." "Fascinate you?" Tae-ho looked even more confused. "Why? I'm the most ordinary person you'll ever meet." "That," she said, "is exactly what fascinates me." As the evening went on, Tae-ho slowly started to relax. Queen Nalaveth kept asking him questions, but they weren't the formal, scary kind he'd expected. She wanted to know about his favorite foods, what he did for fun, what made him laugh. It felt more like talking to a curious friend than being questioned by royalty. "So you fix your own ship?" she asked, leaning forward with interest. "Yeah, I have to. Can't afford to pay mechanics at every port." Tae-ho was actually sitting normally on the couch now, no longer perched on the edge like he might need to run away. My dad taught me when I was a kid. He always said knowing how to fix things with your own hands was the most valuable skill a person could have. Or your father, it sounds wise. He died a few years ago, but I still hear his voice sometimes when I'm elbow deep in a broken engine. Tejo smiled sadly. He would have gotten a kick out of this whole situation. His son, sitting in an alien queen's living room talking about carburetors, Queen Nalaveth was quiet for a moment. You miss him greatly. Every day. But he taught me something important before he died. He said the measure of a person isn't what they own or what title they have. It's what they do when nobody's watching and there's nothing in it for them. Ah, she said softly, like saving a stranger's life. Exactly. Tejo looked at her curiously. Your Majesty, can I ask you something? Why are you really interested in all this? I mean, you rule entire star systems. What could possibly be interesting about some random cargo pilot's life? Queen Nalaveth stood up and walked to one of the glowing wall panels. She touched it, and the swirling patterns changed, showing what looked like images of her homeworld. In my culture, she said slowly, every action has purpose. When someone does something for you, they expect something in return. Always. That sounds exhausting. It is. I have lived for 200 of your years. Every conversation, every gesture, every gift given has hidden meaning. People smile while plotting. They offer help while calculating cost. She turned back to face him, her dark eyes serious. Then you appear, a human who saves my life and wants nothing, who refuses wealth and power, who sits in my private chambers and worries about disrespecting me. Well, yeah, because you're a queen and I'm nobody special. Tejo, she said, walking back to sit beside him. Do you understand what it means that you are here, in this room? He shrugged. You wanted to talk to me. In 5,000 years, only 7 beings that have entered these chambers. Each one earned this honor through great deeds, military victories, scientific breakthroughs, acts of exceptional service. Tejo's eyes widened. Oh no, I definitely don't belong here then. Those people actually accomplished something important. I just happened to be nearby when you needed help. You happened to risk your life for a complete stranger. You happened to refuse every reward I offered. You happened to treat me with kindness instead of calculated respect. She leaned closer, her voice becoming more intense. My advisors think I have lost in my mind. They cannot comprehend why I would honor someone who seeks no advantage. Because that's not how your people work, Tejo said, understanding beginning to dawn on him. Exactly. But you? You are proof that beings can act from pure goodness. This challenges everything I know about the nature of intelligent life. Tejo sat back, overwhelmed. You're studying me, like I'm some kind of alien specimen. I am trying to understand if what you represent and could change in my entire civilization. Tejo stared at Queen Nalaveth for a long moment, trying to process what she'd just said. You want to change your entire civilization because I helped you? Not just helped me, because of how you helped me, because of why you helped me. She stood up and began pacing, her silver skin glowing brighter as she became more animated. For centuries, my people have grown more isolated, more suspicious. We trust no one completely because everyone wants something. That sounds like a pretty miserable way to live, Tejo said honestly. It is. But it was the only way we knew until now. She stopped pacing and looked at him. You showed me that beings can act without hidden motives, that kindness can exist without calculation. Tejo rubbed the back of his neck, uncomfortable with the intensity of her stare. Your Majesty, I think you're giving me way too much credit here. Humans aren't perfect. We've got plenty of selfish, greedy people too. I'm just me. But that is exactly the point, she said, excitement creeping into her musical voice. You are not exceptional among your species. You said helping others is normal for humans, natural. Well, yeah, most people I know would have done the same thing. Queen Nalaveth made a sound that the translator couldn't interpret, but it sounded amazed. A species where basic kindness is common, where people help strangers without expectation. This is revolutionary. Teho was starting to feel overwhelmed. Look, I appreciate that you think humans are special or whatever, but I really just want to get back to my cargo runs. This whole thing is way too big for me to handle, but you cannot simply leave, not now. She sat back down beside him, her expression earnest. You have shown me a different way of existing. My people need to learn this. I'm not a teacher, Your Majesty. I'm barely qualified to pilot a cargo ship. You taught me more in 3 days than my advisors have in decades. You taught me that trust can exist without fear, that help can be given without debt. Teho looked around the beautiful chamber, at the alien artwork and the soft lights, and felt completely out of place. I don't understand why this is such a big deal. Where I come from, neighbors help neighbors. Friends look out for each other. Strangers lend a hand when someone's in trouble. It's just normal. Normal, she repeated softly. Yes, that is what makes it extraordinary. In my world, such acts would be analyzed, questioned, suspected. But for you, it is simply right. She stood up again and walked to a crystal panel on the wall. When she touched it, the room filled with a holographic display showing the Astari Empire, dozens of star systems connected by lines of light. My empire spans 7 systems. Billions of my people live in careful isolation. They trust only families, and even then is with reservation. That sounds lonely, Teho said quietly. It is, but what if it could be different? What if trust could be rebuilt? What if my people could learn to help without calculation? Teho stood up and joined her at the display. You really think one human cargo pilot can change all that? I think one human has already changed me, and I am the Queen. She turned to face him, her dark eyes intense. If I can learn to trust, truly trust him, then perhaps my people can learn as well. But I don't know how to teach that stuff. I just do what feels right. That is exactly what I need to learn. How to act from instinct instead of strategy. How to help without calculating benefit. Teho was quiet for a long moment, looking at the vast display of her empire. Finally he spoke. You know what my dad used to say? He said the world doesn't change because of grand gestures or big speeches. It changes because ordinary people do ordinary good things, one person at a time. Queen Nalaveth smiled, the first genuinely happy expression he'd seen from her. Then perhaps we start with one person at a time. 6 months later, Teho was still trying to figure out how his life had gotten so completely turned upside down. He stood in what used to be his cargo bay, watching a team of Astari engineers install the most advanced communication equipment he'd ever seen. His rusty old freighter was being transformed into something that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. Are you sure this is necessary? He asked Queen Nalaveth, who was overseeing the work personally. I mean, couldn't you just pick someone more qualified? Someone who actually knows about diplomacy and politics? She turned to him with that amused expression he'd grown used to. Teho, we have been through this many times. You are exactly the right person for this. But I don't know anything about being an ambassador. I'll probably start an interstellar war by accident. You will do perfectly because you are not trying to be perfect. You are simply being yourself. The past few months had been a whirlwind that Teho still couldn't believe was real. After their conversation in her private chambers, Queen Nalaveth had done something unprecedented in Astari history. She'd begun implementing what she called the human approach, policies based on trust, mutual aid, and helping others without expecting immediate rewards. The results had been remarkable. Astari citizens who had been suspicious of their neighbors for generations began working together on community projects. Trade disputes that had dragged on for decades were resolved through simple, honest conversation. Crime rates dropped as people started looking out for each other instead of just themselves. "My advisors still think you have bewitched me," Queen Nalaveth said, watching the engineers work. "They cannot understand how such simple principles can create such dramatic change." "It's not magic," Teho said, adjusting his new ambassador's uniform that still felt strange and formal. "It's just treating people like you'd want to be treated." "Yes, but for my people." This was forgotten wisdom. You reminded us of what we had lost. The transformation hadn't stopped with the Astari Empire. Word of the human who had saved a queen and refused all rewards spread throughout the galaxy. Other alien civilizations began requesting meetings with human representatives. Earth's government, which had barely acknowledged the existence of other intelligent species, suddenly found itself thrust into galactic politics. And somehow Teho had ended up right in the middle of it all. "I still think you should reconsider," he said, watching the engineers attach what looked like a small space station to the side of his ship. "I'm just a cargo pilot who happened to be in the right place at the right time." "That is exactly. Twice you are perfect ways for this role." Queen Nalaveth placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Other species will trust you, because you do not seek to gain from them. But what if I mess up? What if I say the wrong thing and accidentally insult someone? Then you will apologize sincerely and try to do better, just as you would with any mistake." Teho looked around his transformed ship. The cargo bay now housed a conference room for diplomatic meetings. His tiny quarters had been expanded to include guest rooms for visiting dignitaries. The bridge had enough communication equipment to contact any corner of the galaxy. "You know what the strangest part is?" he said finally. "What?" "I'm actually looking forward to it. Meeting new species, learning about their cultures, maybe helping them solve problems the way humans do, by just talking to each other like reasonable people." Queen Nalaveth's markings glowed brighter with what he'd learned was happiness. "And that is why this will work. You see, opportunity for friendship where others see political advantage." The lead engineer approached them and spoke in musical Astari tones. Queen Nalaveth nodded and turned to Teho. "Your ship is ready, Ambassador. Are you prepared for your first official mission?" Teho took a deep breath, looking at his impossible new life. 6 months ago, he'd been a nobody hauling cargo between colonies. Now he was humanity's first galactic ambassador, with a ship full of alien technology and the trust of an entire empire. "You know what?" he said, grinning. "Let's go make some friends."